Welcome back. I'm still with my guest, Pastor Shimmy of Shimmy Ministries. We've got the CEO of the CRL Rights Commission, and we're talking about should background checks be done on every individual who comes into the country who expresses some interest in opening a church. Is the integrity of the church in danger if we don't? The South African Council of Churches believes we should, and the CRL agrees. Pastor Kotu says a secular state cannot and should not regulate a divine church. Remember that we ask you to be a part of the conversation, and you've given us some comments on Facebook as well. Let's check out what is being said on the Facebook page. Nepsta Khaunewe says it's a good idea only if those who are going to regulate churches were not corrupt themselves. What I am thinking is government must come up with laws which make it hard to open a church, let alone to run one through a heavy tax and regulated regime. Mulebogeng Rapulane saying, you are saying an ungodly government cannot regulate the church? That's what you're saying. Does it need a special body?
No.
Right? Can we get benefit from this? Listen, a key recommendation here is that let's come up with an umbrella body that is going to look not maybe so much at the criminal element, because you're saying we've got enough laws, there are police, and people who are criminals, they must be arrested. But maybe let's talk about the ethical part of it. That is going to regulate that, you are behaving ethically.
The question that should be asked, and then if it has to do with the response we've heard from Bra Eddie so far, it's quite concerning me. Because he said nothing specific to the subject matter. He speaks around in circles, hypothetically, and all of that. What is the CRL Commission concerned with specifically regarding churches? And I'll tell you what. The reason he says whoever they approached said there was not enough laws to do this is that's how far a secular government should go in regulating society. If you're going to operate a non-governmental organization, register it. If you're going to be handling public funds, have tax in place. All these exist. The only aspect of the so-called church life that seems unregulated is what we believe and what you do. Yeah. Now, there are two things about it. You can never regulate what I believe. It's my constitutional right. For what I believe to be legitimate, it cannot be institutionalized. I don't have to belong to anybody to exercise my constitutional rights. You can never force me. You and I can sit and decide we're going to start the church that worships TV. We don't need to be institutionalized. It's our constitutional right, as long as we're not breaking any law. You can't tell me, for me...
people have started a church that apparently congregates around beer.
Yeah, that congregates around beer. What law are they breaking?
And that's the problem, isn't it? Ethically, as a pastor, you're saying you don't find any problems with that?
But don't forget, a secular state in a multi-faith and multicultural context defines truth as relative. That's the problem I have. You are a secular state. How are you going to judge between a false and a true prophet? Because where we sit as Christians, the Bible defines that. So you're going to have to be first a believer in the Bible before you can tell a false from a good teacher. Where you are seated at a secular church, you have no idea of who's the real preacher between Ray McCauley and the Khabula church. As long as none of them is breaking the law, they're within the right to practice what they want.
Hence, they say, get your peers who are in the space, who are preachers themselves, to then regulate you and hold you to account.
Let me tell you why that wonder. Because to some extent, sectors of the church have been regulated. The SACC is a regulatory body. The IFCC is a regulatory body. There are a lot of regulatory bodies, but none of them have been able to stamp out corruption. You can't stamp out corruption if it's not attached to any criminal activity. Corruption is an abstract term unless it can be traced back to breaking the law. The Khabula church guys, I think they're doing foolishness. But how do you even begin to close them down? On what basis? If they believe that you open the Bibles and drink beer, what law are they breaking? The CRL Commission is hiding its true intent.
One would say they're breaking the laws of the God that you believe in.
Precisely. And then if somebody is breaking the law of God, a government that does not believe there is God should intervene on behalf of God. Please, Thabo. They don't believe there is God. So now they are intervening on behalf of God.
So that means I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond. But first, though, let's get our first caller for tonight. It's Emmanuel. He's in Durban. Emmanuel, good evening.
Hello, good evening. I'm on the line.
Yes, what's your comment and what's your question? Go for it.
Hello, good evening. My question and my comment is, the pastor, they always ask us to pay for 10% of what we make.
Yes.
And I want to ask them also, they are living in the country, how much tax are they paying for how much they make to the government?
Okay.
Because they go to hospital for free, and they are not paying anything. We pay to them.
Yeah.
So pastors, they don't pay nothing to the government because them also, they belong to the state.
Okay. That's Emmanuel there in Durban. There's evidence that's been produced by the CRL that says there's tax evasion. Pastors don't have bank account. Ray says they take it out in bags out of the country.
If there is that, call the law enforcement agencies. The CRL is not a law enforcement agency. Are they going to replace the cops, the commission of whatever? Listen to me. The CRL commission, as far as I'm concerned, is operating outside its mandate. Its mandate is to ensure that everyone's cultural, linguistic, and religious rights are not violated.
Let's not go further. Let's just give you an opportunity to respond. You want to intervene on behalf of God.
Yeah.
Well, I think we must set the record right here. One, Civil Rights Commission never wanted to say to anybody that we are closing the churches. You can go through our report, you will not find that kind of information. People are being misled there. The second thing is that we, as a commission, established to promote the religious rights of communities, have a responsibility to assist the religious sector to operate orderly. And that in itself does not mean that Civil Rights Commission is getting into doctrinal issues.
Yes.
We are not dictating any issues when it comes to doctrines.
Yeah.
But we are suggesting, in terms of our report, we are recommending that the religious sector, looking at the challenges that they are going through, looking at what is happening, and again, informed by our own constitution. Because whether you're a religious person or you're a religious institution...
Let's cut through the political speak and get to the heart of the matter.
To the heart of the matter.
How are you going to tell a false prophet from
a true prophet
now, if you don't believe
there is God?
There is God
no.
and there are prophets?
Now,
that's the question that was in
Now, who does not believe that there's God? Because the environment gives that opportunity to everyone. So it's very difficult to say, somebody does not belong to God. But what we are saying
then
here...
you are conceding to what he's saying.
No,
what is your definition of a secular state? What is your definition of a... The CRL Commission cannot redefine. You can't redefine.
No, we are not redefining.
As a Section 9 body, you can't redefine what type of government we have. Finish. The Constitution renders us a secular government.
But it also gives...
But let's listen. Okay. And as a secular government, what tools do we have to tell a false prophet from a true prophet?
Yeah. So what we are saying here...
there's no criminal activity.
Yeah.
Hold on.
And I think we need to be very careful here. It is not our responsibility to say this is a false prophet, this is the correct prophet. Hence, we are proposing a peer review mechanism. It is people like him who should be able to tell government that this one is a false prophet.
But here's the problem. Who is going to license the people after?
Exactly.
Now, look, that's what I must actually explain. Yes. In terms of the peer review mechanism that we are proposing, we are saying each peer review will be responsible for its own people who believe in the same things. And they should be able to take care of everything that takes place within the very same space. Now, they are the ones who should be able to say to government, we have 50 religious leaders within our own setup. Please issue, a recognition or register them, and then we give them to them.
Let's have it up with some of our callers.
And that's exactly what we're saying. Let's have it up
with some of our callers, and then you're going to respond to that. We've got John. He's in Vereeniging. John, good evening.
Yes.
Welcome. Go for it.
Okay.
What's your question? What's your comment, John?
Good evening, Thabo. Let me just chip in. I think I've got serious problems with CRL.
Yes. What's your problem?
Yeah. CRL is sitting with a report that was based on 81, a sample of 81 churches.
Yes. 85, maybe. I think that's what they say.
Yeah. Very few people, and they are so obsessed with excesses within the Christian communities, when by their own admission, together with Ray McCauley, there are thousands of churches that are not regulated, and those churches are not breaking the law. And you're not talking about closing the training colleges of Sangomas, where there were documentaries that show there's rape that is taking place there, and you have 2 or 3, 4, 5 people transgressing the law, then you're talking about regulation. I think the mandate of CRL must not necessarily be obsessed about regulating Christian churches, but rather try and take the advice from Parliament and call a summit of all religious leaders and engage them on the way forward, and not be obsessed with regulating each time one person goes out of order.
All right, John there in Vereeniging. What do you say to that, Eddie? This issue of 85 or so people that you consulted came up in Parliament. You went to Parliament, you said, here are the recommendations. Parliament said, this thing of yours. You also didn't consult broadly. One of the issues that they were discussing. Well, they said, go back, think about it. We recommend, call maybe a bigger forum of people to come and talk about it.
Yeah, but by the way, you must remember, they are suggesting the way forward, from our report, that perhaps you should do this. But let me say that the 85 that we are talking about, it's a misrepresentation from what people say. I'll give you an example. If you say it's not enough, let's say SACC. How many churches are under SACC? If you call an umbrella body that represents a lot of churches under it, do you count it as one? Yeah. If you call ZCC Church, for instance, that has got 11 million people in this country, right. How do you contextualize that and say it's one?
Shimmy, you've got
no,
an answer.
I mean...
Yeah, he's got an answer to
I have an answer.
I know he does, on the SACC and all the other churches that...
And let me tell you why, in the same breath, your peer review won't work. Pastor A, within their group, they believe that divorce and marriage are fine. Pastor B believes it's sinful, but Pastor A and B don't believe in polygamy. But Pastor C believes that a man should marry, and there comes the Roman Catholic who says any preacher of the gospel should not marry. So it's going to regulate too. Yeah. Stay away from what we believe and what we practice. Be concerned about tax evasion, crime, sex before marriage is outside your domain. Homosexuality is outside your domain. Concentrate on those issues that make society governable. You can never regulate what I believe in and what I practice. You are infringing on me, and while you do that, you have targeted the church in isolation of the broader religious and cultural society. Let's look at Judaism and Islam. Is it a culture or religion? Very thin line. There are things Muslims do that I find foolish, that they have a right to do, and you're keeping quiet on. Wait, let's talk about initiation schools, where crimes have been committed. Boys die in those schools. You are doing nothing about it. Somebody who makes people eat grass and they survive is not breaking any law because he never hypnotized them into eating grass. You came out when you started this investigation. You used TB Joshua. I believe he believes rubbish, but he has a right and his followers to practice what he does. You were concerned about the 101. How many people died there? Yeah. Lots. How many people have died since South Africa became a state on the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Muslims? You are isolating and targeting the church, and you are infringing on our constitutional rights. You have no right to even address church when you've not spoken about culture and religion. Yeah, I think... your terms of reference are completely...
Let's get things right here. I think my brother here is not informed. I mean, when he says there are people dying at the initiation school and you have not done anything, he sounds like he's living in another world. No. Because all South Africans know what the commission has done in terms of that and the recommendations. Something has done. Secondly, the issue of saying that when we started the investigations, we were informed by TB Joshua. TB Joshua is not actually the person who informed our investigation. We were informed by the challenges that were happening in this country. By the way, we received even complaints. Yes. That has to do with that from the religious sector. Right. So religious sector should not be able to claim. The religious sector is a broad thing. And the challenge that is arising is that you went to the SACC, they went to the guy, Penwell, and they said, Chief, stop feeding people these things. Don't do that. He said, no, I'm not going to listen because God told me this is how I demonstrate divine power. And you came back and you said, well, the churches are saying this thing doesn't work. But did you consult broadly all the other churches who possibly might believe in what that gentleman was doing? We are saying we called in, umbrella bodies into our investigations. Yes. It could be the traditional churches, it could be charismatic churches. You must remember, South Africa has got about 55 million people here.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to expand on that. I quickly want to take
yes.
Tekiso is in Centurion. Hi, Tekiso.
Baba Ujali.
Siyaphila Puti.
Hi, Ngiyaphila. Doctor, how are you? Doctor, how are you?
I'm good.
He's listening,
Good.
yeah. Talking to you.
And also CEO, my greetings. Gentlemen, I think we are dealing with a broader problem. Religion in itself, it has been made to say, and the challenge about that is that even when people fall prey or to these carnivals that are coming from other countries, I don't want to be xenophobic on this matter, but the outcry of or the outcoming of so many pastors from Nigeria is because of now. Lagos was one of the most noisiest cities in the whole world, and they ended up bringing regulations that in order for you to operate a church in Lagos, you need to write to the president. That is why they were regulating the formulation of a church. I think even with us, we need to ensure that we regulate the establishment of an NGO or a registration of a church, but what they practice within the church, we cannot regulate. Because it is the very same members who believe that when they ate grass, they felt better, they saw prosperity from drinking petrol. Yeah. And when somebody believes in something, it is within their system. But
Thank you, sir.
I agree with the doctor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's Tekiso there in Centurion. Point being made.
I'm saying what he has a point on is the fact that much as there is need for order, government has no part in defining the belief aspect of that.
Yeah.
What you don't know is, not in South Africa, if you'd done your study, you'd have known how full your process is. Not even in South Africa. The larger portion of the Christian community is uninstitutionalized. The home church movement is on the rise around the world. So you've consulted a handful of people who agree with you, and in isolation of the broader community that will be affected by it. The church as an NGO should be regulated as an NGO, not as a responsible.
Needs a minute before we close. Go for it.
Now, what I'm trying to say here is that he continues to say we have consulted a very few people, and I'm arguing to say we have consulted umbrella bodies that have actually represented millions
says,
in this.
This is what Cocter says.
Yeah.
Cocter says go and convene a broader summit.
But what is, well, I don't want to to sound like I'm contradicting what Parliament is saying. But what is a broader summit? In South Africa,
I don't know what a broader summit is.
With 55, where will you find?
But they are saying the ones that you consulted are not broad enough.
None of the representatives.
You see, enough is also something that you will have to define.
We're out of time. Unfortunately, we're going to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming through and having it out with us. And that's it for this edition of Let's Have It Out. Keep the conversation going on social media. You can use the hashtag LHIO. Baba Mtetwa will be your host tomorrow. I'm Thabo Mdlhuli. I'll see you in the morning. Thanks for watching. Good night.